here's a headline: Congress to eliminate billions in Wall Street subsidies to fund repair of nation's highways. So what they decided to do, that was from October of 2015. So here's another way that the banks get free money. So in 1913, when they started the Federal Reserve System, to get banks to join on to the system, they offered them an incentive saying, we'll give you 6%, we'll offer you a 6% profit, return on your investment, 6% every year, but you can't, and that's so that was to get them into the Federal Reserve System, right? Well, now everyone realizes that's ridiculous. We're just giving them money. So it turns out it was hundreds of millions of dollars a year. So what Congress decided to do was cut that subsidy from 6% down to 3%. And then they could actually put $17 billion into highway construction over the next 10 years from that Wall Street money. Well, Wall Street is going nuts, right? Because the big bankers, so here...
By the way, $17 billion is nothing. It is nothing.
Over 10 years. Right.
Over 10 years. We gave $700 billion to the banks to bail them out.
But they're still fighting it. You're right. And look, but they're still fighting it. It's not that much money, and they're still fighting it, right? And by the way, this is money we just give to the banks.
And it's still 3%. They're still making a lot of money off that. 3%, it's an overnight loan. It's a quick loan. They're still getting a phenomenal rate.
Phenomenal, right? But then they wanted to cut it to 1.7. So to get money to build stuff in America, they wanted to. So what they're doing now is here. This is from Zach Carter. He did an article in the Huffington Post. They're the big. So big banks get they get a lot of free money from the federal government, and their lobbyists think they have a constitutional right to it. That's from Zach Carter's article in the Huffington Post.
Oh my God.
He goes on, each year the government pays billions of dollars to banks for them being part of the Federal Reserve System. These payments aren't structured to influence or encourage any particular business activity. Banks just get straight cash no matter what they do. This is true. The Fed is here to keep the banks fully fed, and now those banks are morbidly obese, okay? So Zach goes on. Zach says the subsidy is economically useless. So this subsidy that we're giving these banks is economically useless because it doesn't push interest rates lower or boost pay for bank tellers or help more farmers qualify for loans. The money just goes straight to the bank's bottom line, boosting bank profits. So that's, again, just a subsidy. Government money going right to banks for free. That doesn't do anything to help the economy except enrich bankers. Hey, what do you get a bank who has everything? More of everything. So last year, Congress passed a law that cut down on these payments, and now they're complaining about it. So bankers are using the Fed to lobby Congress to overturn these subsidy cuts. And the American Bankers Association CEO said that, quote, cutting subsidies to banks amounts to taking the members' bank's property. That's what the CEO of the American Bankers Association said. He said that, quote, cutting subsidies to banks amounts to taking the member bank's property. So the member banks, meaning the banks that are a member of the Fed system. It's like taking their property, cutting their free money, cutting their welfare, which is what this is. So why do we pay these to the banks anyway? We've talked. So it's to get them to be participators in the Federal Reserve regulatory regime. So in other words, the Fed gives you billions of dollars as a thank you for being part of this central bank. That's really what this is.
Which is designed to keep the country stable,
yes,
essentially.
But it's now useless. Doesn't do anything for our economy. All it is direct cash payment to banks to enrich their bottom line. And yes, it's like a thank you note for being gambling addicts who tanked the economy and suffocated equity out of working people.
I have a suggestion, and I don't know macroeconomics, but look, if you don't want, if you're complaining about the subsidy, leave the Federal Reserve System.
I agree.
Like, let's see how Wells Fargo does, not getting incredibly cheap overnight loans.
So they originally proposed trimming the subsidy by $17 billion over 5 years. The legislation ultimately only ended up costing the banks $2.7 billion, thanks to a late compromise that allowed smaller banks to keep receiving full payment. Since the subsidies are scaled to the size of each bank, the lion's share of the $2.7 billion will come from the small number of big firms. So that's what's happening. And the reason why they don't need this subsidy was because the practice of giving them this money to get them into the Fed system became obsolete when Congress granted the Fed blanket power to regulate commercial banks, whether they opted into the central banking system or not. So you don't need to give them this bribe to get into the federal bank system. You don't need to bribe them anymore, because now the Fed has the power to regulate them anyway. But they still give them cash payments. Why? I don't know. Money in politics ring a bell? Maybe the guys writing the laws are giving speeches to Wall Street for hundreds of thousands of dollars. Maybe that's what's happening. So Congress never got around, this is how they put it, Congress never got around to ending the subsidy after it changed the regulatory standards. And now the bank lobby is insisting that this dividend payment is property that the government is forbidden from seizing without compensation. That's what bankers are. They're fighting for their welfare like nobody's business. This is an issue. This is a really good issue for Hillary Clinton to pretend to care about. And 4 out of 5 economists agree that a small number of people having all the wealth is a great thing for that small number of people. So here we go. So there's 2 stories for you. Banks getting welfare, unlimited almost, billions and billions of dollars in welfare. They're not running good businesses. Wall Street's not running a good business. They're not good business people. You know what they are? They're schemers. It's when Bernie Sanders says it's a business model built on fraud, he's not kidding. It really is. That's what this is. This is what this is. And by the way, $83 billion a year, that's enough money to send everybody in America to tuition free to college, isn't it? Oh, yes, it is. That's how much money we have. Don't freak out.